Greetings gamers, Tim here again, and I was asked to do a video that's a little more than Game Design 101. This is just going to be a general game design discussion, point of view kind of piece, and it mostly is going to focus on skill systems. Now, there are many different kinds of ways to handle skills and skill systems as there are dice rolling methods. And there's always going to be somebody coming up with a new way to handle skills. There's skills that are based on attributes. There's skills that are based on points spent. There are skills that are packages of pre-built abilities. There's skills that are stackable numbers and so on and so forth, and to an infinite level. Now, I tend to break skills down into what I call a limited or packaged skill system, as I mentioned before, or a approaching infinity skill system. A packaged skill system is fundamentally a skill system that assumes you have all the related abilities necessary to perform the skill within reason. If you are a space pilot / astronaut, and that's your skill, pilot, spacecraft, it assumes you're going to have the computer operations, the general mathematics for that, and, you know, all the little sub things that you could break a skill up into. Then there are the approaching infinity skill system, where you almost have to use scientific notation to track all the skills. And that is one that breaks skills down into very tiny bits. And you have to have certain skills before you have other certain skills. In many ways, I see the emphasis on the latter is in trying to create well-rounded characters and to show that if somebody has, like, say, mathematics because it's necessary for a couple of skills, they have that benefit of already knowing that is central to several things. But if you put that tiny little skill in a package, then in general, they're going to have it other skills functional as well. Now, the packaged skill method is usually found in games that want a set of skills but don't want to go into too much detail. A lot of it depends on kind of time period, on genre, on so many other things. And the dice method or the mechanical resolution is not so important to the overall construction of skills. They talk about how they decide how it's resolved, but they don't really determine whether something is going to be a packaged system or a approaching infinity system. Now, GURPS, as of 2nd and 3rd edition, which are the two I mostly use, I also used 1st edition, but I used more 2nd and 3rd, was an approaching infinity skill system. You usually had to have other skills, and you could default at certain skills based on your attribute. But what it boiled down to is, in order to make a space explorer type character, you probably had to have a list of skills that covers a page. And that's just the basics necessary. If the character is supposed to be a broadband, say, space explorer who's two-fisted, you start stacking on and on and on and on. As an example of how that can be shown to be incredibly insane and fun at the same time, there was a book called GURPS Black Ops, and Black Ops was designed so that you were incredibly skilled, incredibly effective monster / alien hunters. And the characters in that, based on, I think, GURPS 3rd edition, where 150 points was an average character, were templates that were bordering 500, 600, 750 and more points in skills and required abilities. So you're looking at almost a 7 times more effective in every way character to your default, this is our generic hero. And that's where the infinite skills system tends to break down, is you start having to build characters on more and more resources until you have reached a unreasonable amount of resources for the game's basis, but yet for the specific genre or setting you're using, it would require that. Now, GURPS 4th edition fixes this by adding bang skills. So instead of having to have mathematics and astronomy and such and such and such to get astronavigation, you simply have astronavigation or space pilot or science. And they're a package of your skills at doing all this stuff related. Now, they push it a little much because they actually push that into the pulp area where science is you're generically good at all sciences to a certain degree. Now, I'm not as familiar with 4th edition, so if I'm utilizing the full power or limiting them in some way of bang skills, let me know. But that seemed to be, from my reading, what it was about. Now, package skills fit more like the bang skills. As I said, you have a very specific set of abilities and of skills that are all related in one package. Now, you can take this very far. For example, the WIRM system, the Warrior, Rogue, and Mage system, packages down into where it's actually an attribute that measures your effective ability between being a warrior, a rogue, or a mage. And you can buy, little additional things to tweak that. But you're basically saying this is your package of fighting abilities and things related to a warrior. Now, class systems sometimes have skills, and sometimes they are assumed into the classes. For example, in early AD&D and basic D&D, it is assumed that a warrior knew what a warrior needed to know to function, which may mean that he knew how to build fortifications. He may need to build, to use a whole bunch of different weapons because there's similarity of some weapons, and so on. But that is a class system as opposed to a skill system like Warrior, Rogue, and Mage, where you're literally got a choice of how you rate which of 3 skill sets you're going to be utilizing. And that kind of gives you some more flexibility because you have a high ranking in one and then less but still high ranking in another. You're kind of a hybrid of those two classes in a class-based game, but fundamentally it's pretty much a skill-based system. Where do you choose to place your design when you pick either skill definitions that I'm using? Now, a lot of the infinite skill packages boil down to someone's attempt at verisimilitude. And I will tell you from sitting at the table that writing down 50 plus skills to get one character made on a blank sheet of paper, because we don't have a pre-printed character sheets necessarily back in the day for everything. Nowadays you can generally get a PDF somewhere, and they oftentimes will have all the skills listed that are necessary for a type. But that gets tiresome and actually limits the verisimilitude because you lose skills in all that. You lose the ability to believe in the reality because of too many details. It's like a super form of existentialism. You are focusing so much on the minutia that you do not get the overall feel of the genre or setting that is trying to be created here. Now, not all games have that problem. Some have the approaching infinity skill system that they keep it tweaked to a narrow enough set of skills that is functional without going overboard. And again, there are going to be skill systems that exist in between both of these, simply because somebody went, well, I want this much of infinity and I'm this much of a package. But I'm talking about the two extremes. The thing that gets me with that kind of attempt at verisimilitude is that you really don't end up with well-rounded characters. Instead, you end up with characters with a bunch of skills they may never use because they're after the final skill ability, and they don't get skills in other areas that would actually round them out more. Because, let's be honest, a brain surgeon is more than a collection of all the related skills necessary to know how to do brain surgery. Yes, he's a medical doctor. Yes, he's got, neurosurgery and all these other abilities. But really, you can strip that down and just say he's a brain surgeon. The package skill method. And we get it. We get that there's a lot of information that's packed into that skill. Uh, uh, and let me say, one of my favorite games in terms of setting is a fairly obscure but not too obscure thanks to the internet game called Providence, created by XID Creative. It was supposed to be a fantasy mixed superhero game with a unique setting set on the inside of a planet that was a prison, originally a prison for rebels that were all chunked in there. And they started developing superpowers that were based on magic and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's a very unique world, it's a very creative world, but the skill system dragged down play and actually seemed to be less realistic than a exercise in anal retentive minutia, because it wasn't just an infinite skill system. It was an infinite skill system in which you had to have a skill at a certain level in order to buy other skills at a certain level, which also, these skills over here in this column, which were required for this skill, also sometimes had requirements over here in another skill column. Now, there are some things like punching people that don't have any requirements. They're just, hand-to-hand combat, no big deal. But then there are some where you literally had to stack, and you had this list of skills which you will probably never use. You're going to use this main skill over here. And yeah, some of it is related, but generally speaking, the easiest way to go about it is to create the package, or a somewhat less intrusive version of the infinite package, the infinite non-package system. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling because it's late, and anyway. But at the end of the day, when you decide to sit down and do a skill system, aim for the genre, aim for the setting, but don't get too detailed for anything. Even if you're trying to make a game that has very finite differences between characters, like if you want to create a game about CSI scientists, for example, there are going to be things more important than the differences in their skills at that final level. Now, you may want to measure some of their skills a little bit differently, but actually when they all have roughly the same kinds of skills, and you're going to start looking at their background, at the things they do outside of that skill array that they're doing to differentiate the characters. The things that drive drama, the things that drive their hobbies, this guy rides a motorcycle, this girl rides a bicycle, this person goes roller skating on the weekends with his wife. You're going to be looking at that more than the fact that this one has hair analysis 7 and this one has hair analysis 6 and also has like some other skill that relates to that. Really speaking, it's okay to use either one. I'm not trying to preference somebody for the package system, but you have to remember, when you reach players, your average player, even if they're interested in playing a CSI game, they're going to be more interested in, oh cool, I get my character to solve mysteries, than the individual minute specs of how they do it. And that's what it boils down to. Package skills tend to be more functional when you hit players. Now, not all players, but I have got over 30 years of experience in playing role-playing games, and I have played with a lot of different players, and I have had some that loved the skill lists. They were usually also GMs. They were usually also people who wanted to convince you with the big long skill lists that this is how characters should be. Most of my players who only wanted to be players, they wanted to show up, sit down, and game. Most of those didn't want those tidy 100-page lists of skills and sub-skills and other sub-skills and infinite backstory skills that all drive, your final numbers. They just want to sit down and play a character. They want the personality, they want the tone of voice, and they want to be effective. And that's what it really boils down to, is how do you make a character effective for that player the way they want it to be effective. So this is kind of my thing on skill systems. It's kind of a ramble. Yes, I know. It's late. I got done playing 5th edition D&D, which I will talk about in another video in a few days. Just to kind of give you my feedback on it. So this is where we're at. Take care.